Let's just start out with the very first fight. Let's just start out with the first fight. How about that?
Make sure you keep that mic in front of your...
You're right. Let's start out with the first one. Alonzo Menfield against Paul Craig.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. I really loved this fight. I wish I would have known more about Alonzo Menfield before watching this fight. Did you hear on the post-show about his backstory?
No, I didn't actually watch the post-show.
All right. Let's get through the fight first, and then we'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay. Well, let me just say that last week I picked Paul Craig to win. I couldn't have been more wrong. My boy Paul looked very afraid to throw punches. I don't know, like he would get into striking him, and like he just looked scared. Like I don't know what his problem was. Alonzo looked way better, and then anytime like Paul went to the ground, Alonzo played it smart. Didn't go on the ground with him. Didn't want to wrestle with him. Very smart move on his part. And then Paul, he landed early with one of the leg kicks, and then he just went to the well too many times, as that's how he got finished.
Yeah, I like how Michael Bisping really broke down the fight. I saw Alonzo Menfield come out at the very beginning. He showed aggression at the very, very beginning of the first round, throwing some strikes, and then he got himself locked up in a clinch against the fence against Paul Craig, and his coaches were just screaming at Alonzo to get out of that clinch because they knew that wasn't the game plan. They were afraid that Paul, being the submission specialist that he is, was going to end up wrapping him up and bringing him to the ground and submitting him. But Alonzo actually surprised me with his takedown defense.
Yeah, for sure.
He was able to escape, I think, 2 or 3 takedowns. He was able to keep it off the ground. And a big beast of a dude. He's a former linebacker, football player. And that was something that Kamaru Usman pointed out, that these football player guys, they're able to kind of throw punches with power and still stay on their feet. And he said
they're going to be scrambling all weird,
Yeah, he said for him that balance was really hard to acquire because he was always a wrestler.
Right.
But Alonzo Menfield, he was pretty impressive. He goes from 8-0 to 9-0.
Yep.
Great victory against Paul Craig. One of the things I would like to mention too at the beginning of at the weigh-ins actually, Paul Craig, where's he from? He had that blue paint on his face. He came out really aggressive. He seemed like he was trying to play off some kind of intimidation.
Yeah, I don't know. I do not know. I think it's Great Britain, I think.
Yeah, I
could be wrong, though.
He was blue on, we'll look it up in a second, but he had like blue paint on one side of his face, and he looked like he was trying to play off some kind of gimmick and be intimidating. And then if you saw at the beginning of the fight, whenever Bruce Buffer was introducing these guys, he even came into the middle of the ring and stared right in Alonzo Menfield's face, trying to intimidate him. And Menfield, that guy did not have an easy upbringing. He talks about having been raised in like a group home,
right,
and didn't get into MMA until later in his career when this other gentleman brought him and his brother under his wing and got him into fighting, and it was always an outlet for him to express frustration. So that's more of a sidebar, but anyways, I was really impressed with watching Alonzo. I'm excited to see him. He's a fighter out of Dallas, Texas, football player, tough guy, huge.
So this might be one of your new favorite up-and-comers then.
We'll see. I mean, he's a light heavyweight, and so I know that's kind of a tough class to watch because John Jones is kind of a dominating everyone. He's kind of like the juggernaut in that class, but it is exciting to see up-and-coming talent all the time, especially with our boy who has a shoulder injury. What's his name? I already forget.
Johnny Walker.
Walker.
You know what? I know we have the proper 12 one kind of for Connor, the UFC, but man, we need to get a bottle of Johnny Walker.
Yeah, I think so. It'd be cool if they sponsor him.
Right. They need to.
They might as well. I don't think it'll hurt. I think that guy's going to end up coming out and being quite a showman, as he already has been, as long as he's able to avoid those injuries in the celebrations. But I really liked seeing Alonzo beat Paul Craig up, especially because I don't know if it was a gimmick that Paul Craig was showing during the weigh-ins or during the fight and intros and stuff like that, but to me that just comes off as very arrogant. And after hearing Alonzo's backstory and things like that,
right?
I'm one of those people that's my heartstrings are easily tugged, and I always love to hear a good story and see a guy who has humility come up and show victory. And so I thought it was great. And like you said earlier, Bisping also mentioned Paul Craig relied too heavily on that spinning back kick.
Yeah, I don't know why he kept going to it. And, then that was ultimately the downfall, and that's how he lost. I mean, that really got him in trouble with the last one, and then he went down and then TKO.
Yeah, he threw it a couple times, and it was just one too many times. He wasn't able to outstrike Alonso.
At all.
And then if you remember at the very end, Alonso was able to dodge the kick. At first I thought he caught it, but he actually just dodged it. Then he hit him on the backside, took him down, had some really heavy punches to the face. His last punch was over Herb Dean's arm, which is like, I've never seen that before. Usually anytime the ref steps in, the fighters stop, but Alonso wanted to get another one in, which made sense to me. But all right, how about this next fight, fight 2? I think you might have picked correctly on this fight.
Oh, and I called a first round.
Drew Dober and Marco Polo Reyes.
Mm-hmm.
These two guys are lightweights. The fight only lasted 1 minute and 7 seconds. Ended in TKO. You want to run us through it?
Drew has heavy hands. Wow, I was really impressed with that. When he was throwing, you could just see he was swinging for the fences. I was like, wow, this is going to happen. I was like, this is going to be first round finish, just like I predicted. Marco looked extremely nervous in there. I was like, wow, it didn't even look like he should be in there, in my opinion. He looked just, it was just two different levels.
Yeah, I agree. Drew, it was just very apparent that Drew Dober was the better striker.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't seem like no matter what Reyes tried to do, whatever he tried to throw, Drew was one step ahead of him. He was able to dodge and counterpunch.
Yep.
And his punches were just so much heavier. He kind of looked like a mini heavyweight out there, the way his punches were being thrown and landing. And he even acknowledged in a post-fight interview that he's like, my hands may not be as strong or heavy, but all I got to do is touch you. And, man, were they effective.
Yep. There's really nothing else to say about that fight. I mean, it was just two different levels out there.
Yeah. Dober definitely quicker, stronger, and smarter.
Yep.
And he outboxed him. He outfought him quickly. All right, third fight, Roosevelt Roberts versus Vince Pichel.
And I got this one wrong. Fight. I got it wrong. I can admit that one.
Well, I thought you might have. Didn't you say Vince Pichel was going to win?
Nah, I picked Roosevelt on this one.
Oh, okay.
And this is one I have a lot of problems with.
Well, it went back and forth there for a while.
Yeah. So round one, Roosevelt took. I felt pretty convincingly. He took 10-9.
Yeah.
Round 2, it's a toss-up. You hate those, in my opinion. Absolutely hate those as a fighter.
Well, Vince just wouldn't quit.
Right.
And anytime Roosevelt seemed like he was getting the upper hand, Vince started trying to take him down more and trying to control him and weigh on him a little more. But there for a while, Roosevelt was controlling the fight with his distance and striking and the clinch.
And so round 2, if I'm going into Roosevelt, like if I'm in his corner, if I'm Roosevelt's coach, I'm saying, all right, it's tied 1-1. You won round 1, you lost round 2. If I'm in Vince's corner, I'm saying, listen, you lost round 1, round 2 was close. We're going to say you lost. You're down 0-2. So, and I feel that Vince came out in that round 3, and he conventionally won, in my opinion, and it should have been a 10-8. It should have been a 10-8 round, and it wasn't. And y'all kind of get why I'm getting at this. It was 10-9. He dominated the fight in round 3, I should say. Should have been 10-8. He still won the decision because they gave him round 2. But if they don't, it's a whole different ball game. If they don't give him that round 2, it's completely different. And then, not to switch gears on you here. So, like I said, they gave him the 10-9. If you go to the next fight, and Damian Maia against Rocco Martin, they gave Rocco Martin round 3 a 10-8 against Damian Maia. He did not dominate round 3 at all. Maia was backing up and running from him and stuff, but he did not dominate. That's a 10-9 round, and it kills me because there's
change.
Huh?
Didn't the decision change? It went from a majority decision to unanimous. And
did it go to 10-8? I remember then there was like
fact.
there was a controversial, so it wasn't 10-8?
I think that, I don't know the exact numbers for each round, but I know that it went from a majority to a unanimous.
Okay.
In Maia's favor. I mean, it was clear that Damian Maia dominated
he definitely won
fight.
the first 2 rounds. But that's my thing, though, is there is so much, like, I don't want to say human error, but human error in these judges scoring these rounds. Like, Vince, in my opinion, was a 10-8 round for sure. And the fact that, like, you could even mess that up in that Rocco Martin one, giving him a 10-8, no way. Absolutely.
Well, it bothers me that even decisions like this change.
Right, yeah, why is that happening?
If
Why?
the judges are judges, and the UFC, one of the most respected mixed martial arts platform in the world,
right?
They should have judges who know what they're talking about, who aren't going to be easily swayed and just change their minds like that. And I agree, we're going to bring up Joe Rogan. I mean, obviously one of the biggest voices in MMA.
Yep.
He talks all the time about how these judges are terrible. Everybody talks about how these judges are terrible and that they should be former fighters. I think that makes total sense.
I agree.
Give you that job to former fighters, pay them well.
Man, it's tough to do that, though, because they have ties with all the other fighters, whether they're in camps with them or whether
that's a good point.
You know what I mean? It's
tough.
You
can never find a fighter that's not connected to
someone or that has bad blood towards someone else.
So there's always going to be a bias.
It's tough.
Even
it's
just
tough.
a bias towards a camp or a former coach or something like
exactly.
That world is growing and getting bigger, but it's still small.
Right. A lot of people train with the same people. I mean, even like in same camps, you'll have like 155ers with like light heavyweights. Yeah, they're not sparring or anything, but it's still like a camp. Like perfect example. Oh my gosh, AKA I believe is DC and Khabib.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's a 155er with a heavyweight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but there are only so many camps out there that are at that elite level where these guys can train.
Right. So it's tough. I agree that it needs to be something like the fighters. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how you do it. But I do agree that would be a great idea. Just to touch on the Maia fight once again.
Really no surprises there.
Yeah, I'm disappointed,
the one surprise was Martin's ability to defend himself on the ground against Maia.
And he kept coming.
And that was coming from Maia himself in the post-fight interview, was that he was surprised by his defense. Damian Maia said over and over again that there were little things that he was trying to try and trying to go for, and that he was surprised that Martin was able to defend himself. Obviously, if we had more of a education in jiu-jitsu, we would be able to describe them in detail, but I think it was pretty clear that Martin put up a better fight than Maia expected.
I'm disappointed in Damian Maia. First 2 rounds, classic Damian Maia. I mean, just annoying. That's just the only way you can describe him as a fighter, just annoying.
Well, he is annoying because he's quick enough on his feet to stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he gets a hold of you,
you're going down.
He's just going to drain you.
Yeah, but then in the 3rd round, why is he running around? Keep doing what's working. I understand that like you don't want to jeopardize your win, and this might be coming from the age because I believe Maia's 41 or 42. Yeah. His conditioning might not be where it was at when he was younger, obviously. But man, come on, don't run the whole round. I didn't like that, and I'm a big Maia fan.
Yeah. I don't know where that's coming from.
He was just trying to secure the win. I don't like that. Playing not to lose. That's how you lose.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, overall, though, I think he still controlled the fight.
Yeah, well, rounds 1 and 2 for sure. And then 3, I don't know what he was doing. You want to start us off with the co-main now?
Yeah, Jessier. Is it Jessier?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it a few times. Formiga versus Joseph Benavidez. Ended at round 2, 4 minutes and 47 seconds. I think this was a good back and forth fight. I mean, it ended up being a TKO, Benavidez with the win. And moving forward, not to zoom past the fight, I'll let you break it down a little bit more, but seems like Benavidez is really looking to fight Henry Cejudo. I mean, he deserves it. He's beat him once before. It only makes sense. He beat the next guy up.
Yep.
So he deserves that shot, and that's what we should be seeing next. Hopefully he doesn't have to wait too long to get there.
Because of Cejudo's injury. I don't think they'll do an interim. If I'm Benavidez, I don't take an interim fight. I just
Can you tell us more about Cejudo's injury?
I don't know how long he's going to be out.
What was his injury for?
It was a shoulder, I believe.
Oh, his shoulder injury.
Yeah, and I don't know how long he'll be out. I would assume, I think it was like 6 months, 4 months maybe. It's somewhere in that time frame. So if they could fight December, that's pushing it on Cejudo's injury.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe. It depends on how quick he can rehab and get into camp. Benavidez looked really good out there. I thought that he was in deep trouble. He got a cut. Probably the worst spot you can get a cut. If y'all didn't see it, it was like
Right on his eye.
right on his eye.
Started seeing red.
Yeah, you really can't do anything about it. It wasn't even really a punch that got him. I mean, it was, but it was more of like it was like the thumbnail almost, or like just, I don't know. It was so weird. It's just one of those rare things that really doesn't happen all that often in fights. But when it does happen, you hate to see it. Blood was just going into his eye. His cut man in the corner after that round one did a great job. I mean, phenomenal job getting that blood to stop, and long enough. And then round two came out there firing. I mean, Benavidez, man, that boy's like a little fire ant out there just throwing. It's awesome to watch Benavidez. And as much as I don't like that division, I'm kind of with Dana on it. Man, Benavidez is something special out there.
Yeah, well, these guys, I mean, you got to give it to them. The cardio and the speed and the physical presence, even despite their size, that they're able to exhibit and show. I mean, they deserve a platform, in my opinion. I mean, even if they're not bringing in the greatest money, I still think, where else are you going to show these guys if they're not fighting in the UFC? I think the UFC would be giving a disservice to the population of fight fans if they were to remove this division. I think it's worth keeping around, even if it's not the most profitable, because these guys work just as hard and they have great talent.
But, at the end of the day, what's it all about?
Yeah, that's true, and I understand that as well. But I'd hate to discriminate against the little guys, even though I'm far from one of those little guys. But one of the other stressors about that fight is that if they weren't able to control that eye, he may not have been able to continue fighting.
Yeah,
and how disappointing would that have been?
Yeah, let's say he gets hit there again, and maybe it just gashes more. He could have been a punch or two away from, not being a knockout, but, almost like what you saw with Cowboy with the TKO, not being able to go because the doctor stops it. I don't necessarily think it would have came to that, but listen, like I said, we've definitely seen stranger things, just with the Cowboy incident,
Yeah, it very well could have. All right, so this main event, I had an incorrect prediction here. Francis really surprised me, as he seems to make a habit of surprising people in his fights.
Let me stop you there and just say, as soon as Francis came out and threw that bomb of a leg kick, I was like, where did this come from?
That was a part of his game plan. He said that, Junior Dos Santos is a stand-up guy, and he wants to throw him off balance. He wants to mess with his movement. He wants to mess with his focus, and he threw those heavy leg kicks to kind of mix him up a little bit. Yep. And I think that Junior Dos Santos was definitely surprised by Francis's composure. He seems so calm out there, and they talked about that in the post-fight interview too.
Whole different fighter,
and he said that it wasn't until the last 3 days, 3 days before the fight, when he really started to just gain his composure, be focused, and reflect back on that Stipe fight. That Stipe fight is a giant chip on his shoulder right now, and the way he described it, it was a big moment, a turning point in his career for him to learn how to prepare, how everything works. He's only been in the UFC. He's only been in the mixed martial arts experience for 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah, it hasn't been long for Francis.
He's still so new, but he's a monster.
You have to give him the title shot next, right? After the DC Stipe, unless Bones wants to go up, right?
That's the only thing.
That's the only thing.
Yeah, if John Jones wants to go up, then that will be the only thing that gets in his way.
Yep.
But either way, Francis wants he wants that fight with Stipe more than he wants it with Cormier.
Well, I would too, because DC. If Stipe did that to him on the ground, what do you think DC will do to him on the ground?
Right.
Not saying that Stipe is no slouch on the ground, but DC is just that awesome on the ground.
Well, yeah, DC is one of the greatest of all time. But yeah, Francis has been earning his keep, and I'm really proud of him. I mean, I'd like to see him on the ground. I'd like to see how he's improved there,
No,
but
I don't want to see
he
him
hasn't
there.
had to go to the ground, and so
There's a lot of heavyweights that heavyweights aren't big wrestlers like that. I mean, yeah, you have some, but I mean, they want to stand and bang. You know what I mean? You look at Kane. I mean, boy, starched Kane too.
yeah,
That could.
that's still such a disappointing fight. I wish he would have won differently, or
I
Kane
might
would
get
have lost
torn up
differently.
by some UFC fans or MMA fans, but Kane is quite possibly the best wrestling heavyweight of all time.
Yeah.
Possibly. I'm not going to say he is, because you still got DC there.
Well, one of the best heavyweights with cardio as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
You know,
I mean, he's just
Kane
one of
was a
the best
machine in his
heavyweights of all time. Possibly the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time. He's in that argument.
prime. Yeah,
I mean, top 4 at worst.
I'd really like to see Francis against Kane.
Again?
A Kane that we were used to seeing, Kane at his best or Kane in his prime.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll ever see that again, but
Kane's
I think
always
that
hurt.
if Francis would have gone against Kane at a different time, it would have been a much different fight. You know, Kane coming back after not fighting for so long.
Yeah.
But this is one thing I want to say about Francis is everybody talks about how freakishly huge he is.
Mm-hmm.
And even standing next to the announcers at the end with Usman and Rashad Evans right there. Rashad Evans, he's much thinner and smaller now, but he used to be a light heavyweight. And
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
he even fought heavyweight a few times. I could be wrong there, but I know he fought light heavyweight. And he just towers over these guys. He's a monster. But the point that I want to make there is that I think every fighter that steps into the octagon with him underestimates how big he really is. And you could almost see it on their faces.
Yeah.
You know, that physical dominance and that size that he has. It sounds weird talking so much about his physical stature. I think it's an intimidation factor. I think these guys have to rethink their game plan in their heads after stepping into that octagon, and that gives Francis an advantage.
I don't think there's a more dangerous fighter in the UFC.
I have to agree with that. I mean, what a beast.
Well,
All right, so that is the recap of UFC 3
on
Son of a
ESPN
bitch.
3.
UFC on ESPN 3. I keep messing that up. I messed it up 3 times at the beginning of this video. Yeah, let us know your thoughts. Let us know how we can improve. Hopefully this video and audio turns out. We've been working and receiving feedback and looking to have more fun with this, but also make it better for everyone. So catch us back for predictions for the UFC 239.